My name is Israel Stepanian. I'm a fine art appraiser based in Los Angeles. I also represent Bravado Fine Arts and Appraisal Services, and in collaboration with Anga Fine Arts, we provide fine art appraisal and restoration and conservation services in Los Angeles. Actually, the goal of our goal today, actually my goal, the goal is so huge, but the goal is to bring the appraisal education in Armenia. And ASA, I'm part of ASA and ISA, American Society of Appraisers and International Society of Appraisers. And ISA is designing a special program for Armenia, and this is just part of it. This is just a small booklet that we can prepare about 3 to 5 appraisers, fine art appraisers in Armenia. I will talk about that, and I would love to tell you that the appraisal profession used to be not very respected profession, almost anywhere. And a few stories. I will tell you a story which will prove how it became important. In our appraisal school, they told us a story about our profession. This man calls the insurance company, telling them that I have 2 valuable artworks, extremely valuable. Insurance company trusts the man, and they never send an adjuster, actually, to check if the pieces are really valuable, the provenance, authentication, nothing. They just ask for photos, couple of photos, and then they insure the piece. A year later, this man calls to the company and says that the pieces are gone. He gets his $2 million. A few months later, IRS calls the man to find out what happened to the payment to IRS, the taxes. And he confirms that I don't have to pay because it's an insurance money, which is correct. But again, they started the investigation, and the investigation revealed that the pieces are hanging in a museum in Italy. He never owned the pieces. Stories like this made our profession respected. Now they send us to actually physically see the piece, which means appraisers now, we have 3 major roles. First role is appraiser as witness. We have to look at the piece, we have to see where the piece is, the location of the piece, that's our first role, and then what's the condition of the piece. Our second role is identifier. We have to identify what we see. Whether it's an oil painting, it's a work on paper. The third role, the final role, is a valuer. Then have to give a value at what we see. So let's say this story that I told you. If they send an appraiser, then he would check the provenance of the piece. Then he would find out that these pieces are actually in Italy. They're in museum. This man does not have these pieces. Which means provenance is extremely important for appraisers, for collectors, for artists, for everybody. I will talk a little bit about provenance. Provenance is actually the origin, goes back to the maker. Provenance includes, as you can see, again, provenance includes also exhibition history, and even restoration history. So place of origin or earliest known history of something. And art provenance has even a better definition. But provenance also, we have to consider, even the artwork has a provenance, it doesn't mean you can sell it or it's authentic. Provenance has to be traceable, and provenance has to be verifiable. You cannot just say, this piece was in my family for 150 years, it means it's authentic, I'm selling it. It's actually preferable that the artwork has a complete provenance. We prefer to have a complete provenance. But in most cases, we do not have complete provenance because of sometimes owners do not want to reveal their information. They're keeping it secret that I don't have this piece. Or the artist is not very well documented. But if the artist is very well documented and there is no provenance, then we have a big issue. Because the art market knows that this artist is well documented actually, and why you don't have a provenance for the piece. Then there is something wrong there. And provenance makes the value higher, of course. The same artist, if let's say we have a Saryan work, Martira Saryan's work, that sold for 300,000, with a better provenance, it might sell for 500,000 or $1 million. Provenance actually helps the value of the piece. That's why I strongly suggested that the family should be present for these talks, because artist family has a major role in authentication and provenance, because they have the information. They have the, if they don't even have catalogue raisonné, at least they have the information. I can give you one example. This is a good example of a complete provenance. By the way, this is the most valuable work I appraised in my career. This work is in Forest Lawn Museum in Los Angeles. It's by a French artist, Bouguereau, and it's $10 million. And in his catalogue raisonné, there is a complete provenance of the work. Provenance includes the purchase receipts, transfers, gallery purchase, donations, anything you can document it. And this piece has a great provenance. If this piece didn't have this kind of a provenance, I don't think it would be appraised even 5 million. The complete provenance makes this piece 10 million today. It's even restored, but the restoration was done in Getty Research Institute, Getty Restoration Institute, and they did a great job, which did not affect the value that much. But restoration can sometimes affect the value as well. And authentication is part of the process as well. And authentication and provenance they come together actually. Because great provenance makes it easy to authenticate an artwork. Of course, artist is the primary source for authentication, if the artist is still around. And then, the second great source is the family, the estate. Like I said, estate is very important. They have the collection of the artist, they have the books and catalogs, they have all the necessary information for the artist. It's a primary source after the artist for authentication. And second, in some cases, like in the case of Ruben Nakian, American-Armenian sculptor from New York, from East Coast, his estate, his son, Paul Nakian, assigned the gallery dealer, Jack Rothberg, to authenticate Nakian's works. He's handling Nakian's estate. That happens as well. If the family members are not knowledgeable, or they do not have the time, or they can't do it, they can assign a respected dealer or a gallery who can actually authenticate and run the estate. So that's a gallery or another dealer. Or a foundation, society, let's say Picasso Society, Chagall Foundation, things like that, they also can authenticate artworks, if in case there is no estate or there is no family. And the second person who can, I think the final one who can do it is a scholar who actually wrote the catalogue raisonné of the artist, who published the catalogue raisonné of the artist, or another respected scholar who researched the era at least. And we also involve other techniques for authentication, which is signature expert, chemical analysis, again provenance research, stylistic analysis to see if, let's say, what is the, if the signature shows that it's from the artist, then brush strokes, let's say the style, Is it Saryan? Is it not Saryan? Is it Nakyan? Is it not Nakyan? Also, catalogue raisonner research is very important. Catalogue raisonner includes almost every piece that artist painted in his lifetime. Signatures, how many ways he signed. Sometimes they sign Saryan, then next year M. Saryan, then Martyros Saryan. So it includes every signature. Every time he signed Russian, Armenian, English, whatever he signed. Even they include fakes, known fakes, that the family estate thinks they're fakes. They just publish it in this book, so the world knows that if you come across these pieces, please do not purchase them. They're the famous fakes. So catalogue raisonner is a very important source for art authentication and for art market in general. Only few Armenian artists have catalogue raisonneurs, but that's another. It's a little bit different field that we cannot cover everything, but it's also something that we have to think about. That at least the classical period artists should have catalogue raisonneurs, because that also affects the value. If artist does not have a catalogue raisonneur, collectors automatically think that he was not important. That's why no scholar did not have any interest to research his life and to publish the catalogue raisonneur. That affects the value a lot. Catalogue raisonneur affects the value of the artist in general. Not specific artworks, but artist in general. In some cases, actually artwork too, because if the work is not in catalogue raisonneur, that raises a question. It might be fake then, or not necessary, but it might be. That raises a lot of questions if it's not in that book. The appraisal practice. I'm just going over quickly because there is a lot to cover, then we can do it with questions. Appraisal. So appraisal profession, like I said, it's very important at this time already. And what is professional appraisal? An unbiased, supportable opinion, conclusion of a defined value by a person trained in research and analysis. So you have to be knowledgeable in the field. There is no governmental guidelines, in the United States at least. There is no licensing, state federal licensing to become an appraiser. But you have to be a member of professional associations, ISA, ASA, or AAA. International Society of Appraisers, American Society of Appraisers, American Appraisers Association. If you're not part of those associations, you do not consider qualified appraiser. Judges will not accept you. IRS will not accept you. Most insurance companies will not accept you, your work, your report. Again, the three roles that I spoke about, it's very important that you witness the piece. In some instances, we can actually do an appraisal through photographs, but I don't prefer doing that because seeing work physically, it's very important. When you look at the work, when you look at the signature, when we do our analysis, blacklight analysis, and measure the work, it's very important to see the work. IRS, in most instances, IRS will not take the report if you mention that you did not see the work physically, you have done the appraisal through photographs. It will not be accepted. And identification is important. How we identify? Through medium, and also we use, again, catalogue raisonneur most of the time to see if the work is in raisonneur. If we cannot authenticate the work, usually we do not take the assignment if there is a suspicion. If I suspect that the work is not authentic, because I'm not an authenticator, I'm an appraiser, I have to contact a scholar. Again, let's say, I bring the Saryan example a lot. Let's say if there is an issue with Saryan's work, I will contact Saryan Museum, she's sitting there, Rosanna, and I will confirm with her, is this Saryan or not, which I did previously. Or I contacted Galen's family, if it's Galen's or not, or Minas, Narek, Minas' son, to confirm if that was his work. And in most instances, I actually continuously do that. I do that every time. I cannot authenticate myself. I do not have the right to write an authentication paper, COA. certificate of authenticity. I cannot provide one. That's actually fraud. I can't do that. And almost anybody can do that, just except for the people I just mentioned, the family, estate, dealer who is assigned by the family, or a person who actually researched the artist for a long time and published his catalog raisonné. And how the report should look like. What is appraisal report? How we write that, and what includes the report. Of course, who is your client? The client's information, who is your client? Client is the person who actually pays you. You can pay me to write a report for someone else. That's your client. But also you mentioned the name of the person who the report is for. In most cases, client is the same person. Intended use, very important. What is the report for? Because the intended use will determine the value you take. We have different uses, but the common uses are insurance scheduling, when someone wants to insure the pieces they have, or their collection, or just a single piece. And then we have charitable contributions, if you would like to donate a piece to a museum and get a tax write-off. And the third common one is an insurance damage claim. If your pieces were damaged due to a water incident or fire, then we have to appraise the collection so the insurance can reimburse you for that. There are some other cases, divorce, equitable distribution, estate planning, and that's why we need to know the intended use to get the type of value. For instance, for insurance scheduling, it's replacement value, that if something happens, insurance has to reimburse you. Replacement value is the gallery value, is the retail value. And then for other instances is most of the time fair market value, which is the auction value, auction price, the secondary market, not the primary. Very important, the effective date. Whenever effective date varies, let's say if it's insurance scheduling, is the day that you physically saw the piece. The physical inspection becomes the effective date. If it's inheritance, for example, the day you got the letter of inheritance, the day you got it. Charitable contribution, the day you received the letter from an institution that we accept the work. So the acceptance date would be the effective date of the assignment. Comparable sales. Because when we appraise, we cannot just come up with a value and just say, yeah, I believe this is about $10,000 and write it. You have to prove with the research how you came to your conclusion. If you're before a judge, you can say, Your Honor, I know, trust me, it's $20,000. I know, but he doesn't know. That's why we have to explain how we got to that conclusion. It's very interesting how we get to conclusion, because it's not only the market research, it's not only the comparables with what auction sales are. It's very important to know all the markets. For example, in case of someone was asking a question, Mary, I think, asked me a question about that. How you appraise an artist who is not known, who just started, right? We have to know the folk market. We have to know the local market. Because it doesn't matter if you don't have auction records yet. It doesn't matter if you're not selling at Sotheby's and Christie's or Bonhams yet. We know that there are local dealers. We know that there are buyers, other buyers. And if we know the market very well, if we know the local market very well, we will determine a price for you. But mostly for up-and-coming artists, emerging artists, actually collectors, whatever collectors pay, in a way. Unless you need a legal paper showing, if you want to insure your pieces, we have to somehow, through research, through local research, get your prices. But in most other cases, if you have auction records, then we have to give some comparables. If we cannot bring comparables, at least we have to give names of dealers who we consulted with, that they confirmed that this artist is selling for $3,000 for that type of a piece. Also, very important to know, as appraisers, we cannot give a range. we can say 3 to 5,000. That's an estimate that Action gives. Appraisal is a certain one amount. Even if it's $1,557, we have to say that. We can say 3 to 5,000. Yes, the market research is what I told you. When we bring the comparables, then with market research and analysis, we actually tell the client or any intended user how we came to our conclusion. What are the steps we took, what kind of markets we researched, and how we came to our conclusion. Value conclusion, like I said, has to be one certain number. It cannot be a range. That's your value conclusion. Whichever value you get, let's say you have 10 comparables or 3 comparables, then you can adjust the value, of course. If your piece is better than the comparable, you can adjust the value. When I say better, it means it might be a bigger size or an earlier period of the artist. Most of the time, earlier periods are more valuable than later periods. Not all the time, but most of the time. But then you can make your adjustments, but you again have to justify whatever you make. These are great resources to use for appraisers. For instance, IFAR, International Foundation for Art Research, is a great source. They have almost every published catalogue raisonné online. Almost, not everything, but almost. I also use a Getty Research Library for most catalogue raisonnés, but this is a great source for authentication and for provenance research, mostly. These are the associations, this is the association I'm part of, International Society of Appraisers. They have a lot of sources. And USPAP, Uniform Standard of Professional Appraisal Practice. This is also very important, like Anna mentioned. If you're not compliant with USPAP, you cannot function as a professional qualified appraiser. And for art market research, to get our comparables, these are the best sites that we use. ArtNet, ArtPrice, AskArt, and Mutual Art. There are so much more. There are many of them, but these are the main ones that we use. Also, dealers, famous dealers who deal with that particular artist, and dealer galleries, almost the same. And these are just to remind us to talk about some things about role of the artist and the estate that I already mentioned, but I just want to mention again that artist estate is very important. If we have, at least that I know, I'm sure Rosanna will know more, at least 7 to 8 families I know that they deal with the estate, at least 7 to 8, if not more. We have to find a way to make a better connection with them, that anytime, kind of like a resource, that anytime anyone needs to do anything with that artist, they know how to contact these people. They know how to contact the estate and confirm that the artwork they have is real, is authentic. And then the government's role, Anna mentioned that how we can get to that point. Actually, today, art valuation, Aramas, this is for you. Art valuation is actually performed by governmental agency, as I know. What is the name, Aramas? What is the name of that agency? Ministry of Culture. Which is, we believe, is not right. The government has nothing to do with art valuation, and people have to have a choice for second opinion. If, let's say, your minas, government said were 10,000, maybe you want to check with another source and to see if this is correct. Or your minas actually worth maybe 20,000. However, we think that if we approach them today and tell them that this is not the right way to go with appraisal, they might just say, okay, if we stop today, what's going to happen? Who's going to do it? That's why we wanted to actually prepare 3 to 5 appraisers, to have them ready, to go to them and say, these are the people who should do the appraisal. It does not have to, it has nothing to do with government, actually. The government can have other kind of supports. for the artists, for families, but at least valuation and authentication has to be separated. It cannot be done by government and finance. They can help, like I said, but they cannot. You have to have a choice. You have to have a choice for second opinion. You can just ask for. Today we had already a couple of people who are interested to become appraisers, Hasmik and Sarkis, that I know for sure. And whoever is interested, they can talk to me. We can talk about this more. I know this is just overview. This is not a great presentation. This is just overview, but our goal is to establish the appraisal education here in Armenia. I'll give whoever is interested, they can have this is just small brochure, but it has information how to become an appraiser. Also, we have to try to find some funding for students who are interested to become an appraisers. And education is going to be 70% online and about 20-30% face-to-face. They have to fly to New York to do the final exam and come back. Go ahead. I'm almost done. There's nothing else to say. Actually, we can, if they have questions, we can. That's better than.
We can take just 2 questions.
I just wanted to ask you, refer to Sarkis and somebody. These are your local appraisers, or?
Oh, these are people in Armenia. When we spoke to them, they raised interest to become an appraiser. They're here.
Oh, they're here?
Hasmik is right here, Sarkis is right there.
Oh, that Hasmik. Okay.
Yeah.
And so there's a school opening here? Is that what you're?
I think we don't need a school here. All I think, at least for now, we can work with ISA directly. Like I said, 70% of the course can be done through computer, online, and then they can fly to New York and do the exam. Yes, get certificate and come back. Then later on, when we spoke with Aramast, he had a great idea that we can collaborate with American University of Armenia. We can make an extension program here, just like I did at Irvine.
I think that's brilliant.
Yes, that's later. I don't want to promise things that it's not going to happen tomorrow. So, but that's later.
Thank you.
How does the appraiser work with the authenticator?
Yes, appraiser works with authenticator in different ways. First way, like I mentioned, if there is a Saryan's work needs to be authenticated, we contact Saryan Museum, Rosanna, so she can help us to identify the work, to give us the provenance. One more example I can give you. One time I contacted Galen's family estate. Not only he authenticated the piece, he gave me the full provenance of the piece. Who owned the piece 3 years ago, before that, exhibition history, everything. And the authenticator can be the estate, or can be, again, the person who wrote the catalogue raisonné, or a scholar. That's how we are not authenticators. I do not have any rights to give COA again. I have to collaborate with scholars. I'm not a scholar in the field, so with scholars.
I was just wondering, once the work is not authenticated, praised, and authenticated, I guess, does the price how can it change afterwards? Once you give a price, does it ever change again?
Of course.
Can it go down, and how does it go down?
Both ways, but mostly we hope that it always goes up, but sometimes it fluctuates, of course. Yes, for instance, insurance companies tell their clients they have to reappraise their property every 5 to 7 years. I think our insurance speaker will talk about that more. Every 5 to 7 years, they want you to have new appraisal because value might change, and it changes.
And regarding emerging artists, for example, how does the sales affect the price, basically.
Very difficult, very difficult, because most of the time, private sales are not recorded. Or even if they are recorded, they're not very reliable. Because what they think, oh, your friend can give you a check for $20,000, you think I should give it back to him. That's not really, auction sales are more important. However, it helps, because at least there is an interest for your works. Then you're kind of building your primary market, which is going to build later on secondary market. It helps, selling always helps. But of course, private sales are less important than auction sales.